Welcome back to the 2011 mayoral debate on knoxpages.com. This special podcast is brought to you by WS Hog Insurance, A-Plus Auto Brokers, Wise Choice Propane in Mount Vernon and Utica, the Gold Exchange at Mount Vernon Coin and Collectibles, Fit Body Boot Camp, and doctors Jim Swetlick and Jake Overholt at Health Source Chiropractic and Rehab in Mount Vernon. With us are the candidates, the Republican challenger, Jay Manners, and Democrat incumbent, Mayor Richard Mavis. All right, let's talk brick streets for just a moment. Obviously, these brick streets in the city are an attraction. Lots of people look to us with envy because of those, but they are very expensive to look at repairing. But then the flip side of that is they do last a long time. With our current brick street program, do you feel that we are doing enough? Would you do more or less, Councilman Manners?
Boy, that's a huge question. My background is construction. I've been in construction. I was combat engineer in the Air Force. We've built runways, we built roads, we built bridges. So to look at something like that is a very, very large task. The first thing we need to do is take care of the structure. In other words, we need to redesign or move some of our old and aging utilities, water, sewer, gas, electric, so that they're not in the street. We've got to get them moved or redo them, because a brick street should last about 100 years if it's done correctly. And if you're going to spend the kind of money that we spend on a brick street, we need to make sure we're not digging that thing back up shortly thereafter. And we have seen that happen way too often. So the first thing we need to do is address our utilities and get those moved, then redo the brick street so that it's going to last. Now, there's been options floated all over the place on how to do that. I think that if we get a group, look at possibly hiring a subcontractor group that will be brick maintenance, try to lower our costs, because we've got that new $300,000 window for prevailing wage jobs that we can hire. If we can look at, and I've talked with Terry Scott about this, look at hiring a group to just do brick street maintenance, and let them evaluate and repair what they can and possibly do an entire street at a time to be able to lower that cost so we get more bang for our buck going forward. And one of the reasons I talk about the truck route so much is I think that we could get the trucks off the square and bring the bricks back to life that are under the asphalt there and make that a showpiece for our community. I think it'd be a wonderful thing. And when I talk about the streets, you got to realize that you look back 40 plus years, and nobody wants to make the hard call and do something. I mean, there are a boatload of options out there. Extend 229 straight down to Norton Street, connect it over to 36, bring Chestnut down. But we've got to address the problems of the truck route so we can do some of these things. And so that, once we get that moving the right direction and being responsible for our money so we have more money to maintain our streets, that's a good thing.
Now, Mayor Mavis, yours might possibly be the first administration to make any real headway on the brick streets here in the community. What would you change anything about the program in your 4 years going forward? If you should be elected, how will you continue to approach the issue of our aging brick streets?
I think back in 2002, maybe I scared council because I started talking about changing and converting was the word we used, South Gay and Chestnut Street from brick to asphalt. They had huge traffic counts, a lot of trucks on them. They were beating the bricks up. So my point was it didn't look to us like we were going to be able to change any of that in the early future at least. So council at that time said, okay, they conceded those two pieces, and they said the rest of the 6 or 6.5 miles we have brick streets will forever be a brick, and so we have to maintain them. But last council meeting was pretty clear that we haven't totally resolved the issue, because we're trying to do down at Norton Street and Chestnut. Rolls-Royce wants to make that the new entry. They want to make that their primary entry into their complex. Well, they had asked us to do some work there, which we needed to do, some storm drainage, concrete work, and that sort of thing. Also, Norton Street coming into Chestnut Street is paved. If you're coming from West High Street, about a third of the street is asphalt, about 2/3 of it would be brick, and there began to be this big question about whether or not we were violating the O2 ordinance by doing that. As it turned out, council passed that, so we're going to be able to do it. Unfortunately, we didn't pass it under emergency, so we won't be able to get it done this year because we can't start for 30 days after the mayor signs it. But I point that out is that we have not really addressed what we think the future of our brick streets is. I think, to me, there are some clear notes here. We've determined that the 6 miles left are mostly residential neighborhoods. People in residential neighborhoods love their brick streets. First of all, they slow traffic down. There's that ambiance there, that historical significance. So we know we have that in place. We know we have 2 programs now. We know we have the rehab, which we put about $200,000 a year in, and Jay's been part of that. We appreciate that very much. Then we've instituted a repair program. So we have a crew that comes in, takes out the humps, takes out the dips, cleans the brick, puts the base back in, and does it. That's been fairly good and fairly well received. But it costs about anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 per block to do it. The idea of taking storm sewer out, the idea of taking water and wastewater out of there, and taking gas lines out might be a little far-reaching as far as costs are concerned. Certainly, it'd be ideal to do that so you didn't have to dig up the brick streets. I think we continue with that program that we have right now. I would say this. We have even explored, Adam, to figure out how many miles, well, we know how many miles we have, but how much cost per mile if we had to rehab every street we had, and whether or not we could go out and borrow those millions of dollars, and then instead of putting the $200,000 a year, could we have that in debt service? But if you look at the amount of money we need to borrow to do it, and the amount of money we have to make debt service, it doesn't work. The debt service is too great, even though this is a good time to borrow money because the interest rates are low. We're always exploring those opportunities to be more expedient in our move to repair brick streets and also conserve our dollars.
Mayor Mavis. All right, this is going to be what I call our lightning round, or the start of it, and I'm going to do things in a little different fashion and make sure everybody has the opportunity to respond. But Mayor, you've been a supporter of the Kokosing River Parkway project, which includes, among other things, the construction of a pedestrian bridge across Norton Street into Foundation Park, and the proposed reconstruction of an historic bowstring truss bridge that's taken from out on Mill Road in Bladensburg that would connect up 2 islands at the park. Now, with the country in a recession, government revenues shrinking, what are the merits of spending the local match dollars of $359,000 and $110,000 respectively for these projects, while funds could be needed for other city projects? Please respond.
Well, you're right. We put in the applications for the Kokosing River Parkway pedestrian bridge, and also for the bowstring, the Phoenix Iron Bridge, which we call the bowstring. All that is part of the 127-acre Foundation Park development project. It doesn't account for the lineal park, Adam. If you start at Tilden and you follow the Dykeway all the way down to Riverside Park, on over to Arch Avenue, on past Foundation, and on over to Memorial Park. All that, we've looked at as the Parkway, a lineal park. We've looked at development of Foundation Park, the connection to downtown, the connection to the Parkway, the development of a restroom, which we've already done. But there is a plan to develop that park into a real place to draw people into our community. And that's part of our future. We're talking about doing the Woodward Opera House. We're talking about the River to the Lake Trail. The River to the Lake Trail is going to come through our community. We're about middle in the state. We stand in a great position to gather those tourist dollars in, those visitation dollars, what have you. So if you look at where we want to go, this is part of the roadmap that will take us there. I don't know that we're ever going to have as much money as we need. I don't know that any government, the U.S., the state, the city, the county, will never have as much money as we'd like to have. It comes down to priorities. We need to build our roadways. We need to remove our snow, patch the potholes. We need to create that climate so we keep our infrastructure up so Rolls and Aerials and others will be here. But this is an opportunity for us to get the grant money. The $550,000 bowstring truss project is going to cost us $110 for construction and $70. So we have $180 out of the $550 is ours. That's grant money. It comes in. And this is one of those things, Adam, I think we look at and say, our community has won this through the application process. If we choose not to take it, somebody else will get it. Somebody else will be prioritizing. Somebody else will be spending that money. So that's kind of the way, and leadership is part of that. We're not going to make everybody happy about this, but our projections indicate that over the next 3 and 4 years, we would have the money to do this. But again, it's subject to question.
Now, Mr. Manners, do you support this proposal, and what are your thoughts about the Kokosing River Parkway project?
Actually, Adam, that's really good. I do not support it at all. It is a step towards a much larger project that is very costly. And I got a flyer that I've handed. I believe I gave you a copy that I've asked people what the top priorities are in their city. And I also listed on there the improvements at Foundation Park and the bridge. And that was, I have not yet get one citizen to tell me that that's something they want to see happen. So I know there are some out there that would support it, but I'm listening to our citizens. Financially, it's a draw on us. Realize going forward, once we do these bridges, even though you just say $180,000, $110 of matching funds, $70 for engineering, we're still going to have our administration and our engineers tied up out there with the oversight of the project involvement. And then we'll have the continuing maintenance and upkeep of this. And I ask, we've got brick streets in disrepair that we have citizens screaming to have done, and we're going to redirect funds towards something that citizens are telling me no. As a businessman, financially, I direct my funds towards what's going to advance the cause of my business. And I struggle to see how this will help our city going forward in the future. For me, you want to hand the next generation a clean platform that they can take and run with it. You don't want to hand them a liability and an obligation. And so many times government kind of gets narrow-minded in that area, and they forget that the next generation has to live with our decisions. And if this isn't something that they feel is vital, we've just dumped all that money down there and it's gone. And I've seen that occur way too often.
All right, Mayor Mavis, I want to give you a minute or so to respond, if you so choose, with a rebuttal.
Well, again, I think you can take that position. I think that's one, if you go out and ask people, knock on their door, they're probably going to say, yeah, I agree with that. But that's not what I get paid to be mayor for. I get paid to be a leader. And the leader says, not for today, not for tomorrow, but for our future. So I've been there for 16 years. We've done some wonderful things. Now, you can pick each one of those apart and you can disagree with them. This is part of a package. It's like we're giving part of our bed tax to the Woodward Opera House. We believe the Woodward Opera House is part of our future. This big trestle right over here that we have a grant in, we haven't had legislation on it yet, but we have it there. Will that be a good link to the downtown? Will that be a good link to the future of this bike trail that's coming through? I think we have to look at that, and I'm not foolish enough to think that, we could put more money in brick streets. We could put more money into a lot of things that we have. But what we do here is try to choose the priorities, try to choose the best route to make Mount Vernon the best place for the future.
And we will pick this up in our next segment as we continue our lightning round on the mayoral debate for 2011 on knoxpages.com.